Hello, everybody, and welcome to another amazing episode of the Arcade Era Power Hour. This is episode 22, and we will be covering a very special topic, and we have a very special guest with us to talk about that topic. So, as usual, I am Gibbon,
As
and
usual, I am Milo. Hello, welcome.
yes, and with us today is.
Hello, I'm BananaMeteor. I guess I'm kind of active in the rare community at this point, and I do quite a lot of fan art, and I've done a few things for Rare Gamer, and now I'm on a podcast because I just can't stop talking about Rare.
That's understandable. Um,
Yeah,
which,
awesome.
yeah,
I mostly know you as a Viva Pinata fan. I know you do a lot of art for that and collect a lot of
yeah.
stuff from that. But you suggested the topic that we'll be covering today, which is
It's gonna be Donkey Kong 64, and
ooh,
I love the whole N64 Rare era, and I know this is mostly an earlier than that Donkey Kong cast, but maybe we can intertwine some of the retro stuff in with the arcade machine and whatnot.
Yeah, this is actually kind of important game for the arcade era,
mm,
for reasons we'll get into later. But yeah, there's actually a lot to talk about as far as callbacks and connections are concerned. Also, Donkey Kong 64 is just cool, and so yeah.
absolutely.
I think I like it more than the average person, for sure.
Mm, I don't know. I get the impression the average person actually likes it a decent amount, and it's only people who are a bit more invested and try to go for like 100% every playthrough that
Mm,
get more frustrated with it. Because the average person is just going to not do the stuff that's kind of difficult to do on first blush, and they're going to move on and not get up super upset by it.
I want to believe that it's more beloved, but I follow like an N64 group on Facebook that has like something
Mm.
like 78,000 members, an unreal
Ooh.
amount. And I feel like at least once a week someone has to make a DK64 hate thread, and everyone's like, "Yeah,
Mm.
it's terrible," and I'm like, "Oh,
Oh
oh
no.
no."
Oh dear.
sigh.
Okay.
That's fandom for you. It certainly is
Yeah.
influential on the rest of the series, though, and
It
especially
really is.
yeah, and on Smash Brothers, the way the Kongs are represented there.
Oh yeah.
Mm,
Which is then fed back into the series proper
yeah.
as it's wont to do. That happens a lot in crossover games, actually, where they'll pull some aspect of the character that's not from like the original source material kind of gets pulled into a crossover game, which then becomes an iconic part of that character because the crossover game is big and popular and then feeds back into the base series and that's just now there forever. It happened like double fold with the Butcher in the Diablo games because Butcher was one of the original Dota heroes, only they were using
Oh,
a grotesque model from Warcraft for the Butcher because they didn't have proper like 3D Diablo models.
right.
And so the Butcher then became associated with like the meat hook stuff, which wasn't in the original Butcher designs. So when Diablo 3 came out and they had the Butcher as a boss, he had all of this stuff from the grotesque in Dota as part of his attack patterns and whatnot, which then got like even more so when they put the Butcher into Heroes of the Storm, and it just compounded on itself. Yeah.
Yeah, I think for Donkey Kong, the big thing that's gotten just like leaked into all of Donkey Kong now is kind of like the jungle theming, because that was not really a thing until Donkey Kong Country, and now like any stage that like DK has in Smash has to be like jungle-esque.
You're right. Country sort of solidified the jungle theming, which like it was there because that's like a big part of Donkey Kong Jr., but that definitely wasn't what people thought about. You always think about like the Donkey Kong Country 1 aesthetic a lot.
It almost feels more jungle themed now than girder themed, which is strange.
Oh, most definitely. So the games people always remember are like the first of any generation. So they think about Donkey Kong, Donkey Kong Country, Donkey Kong 64, Jungle Beat, and Returns, right? Like those
Mhm.
are the ones. And Donkey Kong Country, Donkey Kong 64, Jungle Beat, and Returns all start out with generic jungle level worlds.
Yeah.
This is true.
And don't you
Um,
normally like start out in the treehouse too?
yes, you start from the treehouse. You always start out in like, this is our generic jungle world. Let's get it out of the way.
And now like Nintendo uses the treehouse logo too for like their little like branding on the like American stuff, the Nintendo
Oh,
treehouse thing.
that's
Yeah, the
that's
localization house.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
because that's actually named after the Donkey Kong Country
Mm.
treehouse, because that's, if you've ever seen that famous like DKC Undercover VHS.
DKC
Um,
exposed.
yeah, DKC
Yeah.
Exposed. The place they're going is the treehouse, and it's named because that was the localization studio for Donkey Kong Country.
Oh,
So it is
very
named
cute.
for the Donkey Kong Country treehouse.
Mm-hmm.
So
Cool.
All right. Well, before we
yeah,
get too far into the topic, we
yeah,
have a bit of a news segment to cover because it's
we
been
have
a while since our last episode.
Yeah,
In fact, it's
apologies.
been so long that I've forgotten the specific content of the first news item. Okay, so here it is. There was a video quite a while ago. Actually, I've got it up. So the date was January 20th of 2021.
That's not. That was only half a year ago.
Yeah, only half a year.
Shit.
So so this is a video that Kev Bayless put up, and he worked on Donkey Kong Country as a concept artist, as well as, a bunch of other stuff at Rare. And I thought the interesting thing about this video is that he's showing off some of the concept art that he created for the characters in Donkey Kong Country, particularly converting the character of Donkey Kong into a new modern era, and how he adapted the design, and how there was collaboration with Nintendo, and faxes back and forth between him and Shigeru Miyamoto,
Yeah.
trying to hammer out the design and how they're going to adapt it. So it's really fascinating stuff about that transition from the arcade era into the country era.
Yeah, just really fascinating stuff. A look at some of the early Donkey Kong Country designs before it solidified as Donkey Kong Country. I do wonder what that sort of Super Donkey Kong versus Wario thing would have looked like.
Yeah.
Or some of the earlier concepts that had like Grandpa Kong and stuff before they nailed down the like crankiest Donkey Kong Senior and
The
Donkey
search
Kong
for the golden banana.
is Junior. Yeah, the search for the golden banana thing. But it's interesting to see what of those early concepts sort of stuck into the final design.
I can't believe that Donkey Kong didn't have like the little ice cream swirl head until Rare got a hold of him. Because it's so iconic that I'll see like older images of Donkey Kong at this point, and I'll be like, "Really? Is that him? You sure?"
Yeah. It's weird how he
Yeah.
just had a flat head for a while, but he eventually gained a
Mhm.
tuft as of, I
Yeah.
think, DK94. It's weird when we were
Mhm.
revisiting the Captain N cartoon in a previous episode.
Mhm.
Between season 1 and 2, he gained a hair tuft.
Yeah. As we discovered, there was a surprising amount of Captain N that sort of prefigured a lot of Donkey Kong Country stuff.
Yeah, like Donkey Kong wearing a tie. That happened first in Captain N.
Yeah. Crazy.
Anyway, I guess the reason for this video is that Kev Bayless has been promoting this collaboration between him and David Wise for the Salamandos
Right.
project. So just to quickly plug that, because that's the reason the video's there.
Mm.
Anyway, the next news item that I found was thanks to, I think it was the Forest of Illusion Twitter account that I follow. They reported on the discovery via Gaming Alexandria of a new version of Mario Brothers Special. So this was part of the line of Hudson's home computer ports of Nintendo games, and they often added new things to them, hence the special name. It's based on Mario Brothers, the arcade game, but with new mechanics and content. I guess the news item is that the PC 8001 version was newly discovered and actually dumped, so you're able to go and download that now and
Hooray.
and emulate it. And this is adding to the list. I looked up how many other platforms this was on. Unlike something like Donkey Kong 3 Daigyakushu, which was part of the same series, there's a ton of home ports for Mario Brothers Special. So it's just adding to an already long list. But yeah, it's a cool thing. If you hadn't heard of that before, check out Hudson's special ports or sequels.
Yeah.
So what is different about this edition that has just been dumped that is distinctive from the other versions that are out there?
Probably not very much.
Yeah. In general, Hudson's like port quills sort of act as soft sequels and have some different mechanics. I'm trying to remember which one Mario Bros. Special was. Was that the one where you actually had to like go to like from point A to point B?
That the objective was to get to the top.
Yeah, yeah. Like
Yeah, for
instead of
some
just
of them.
clearing out enemies and point collecting, you actually like had to get to the exit at the top of the stage.
Yeah.
And so I guess that sort of prefigures some things that would show up later in the series. And they
It's a
did
bit like Ice
other
Climber almost.
Oh yeah, a little bit. They did other special versions. There was of Mario Bros. Specifically, there was Punch Ball Mario,
Hmm.
where you had a little, I don't know what it was supposed to be, like a rubber ball you could fling around the stage, which inspired the recent indie game Anton Ball Deluxe
Oh
that
yeah.
friend of the show Cameron did art for.
Mm-hmm.
And draws a lot from these classic arcade games and the Wario games, and it is great, and you should go buy it.
Yep.
And they also did like Super Mario Bros. Special, which was a they tried. It was a PC port of Super Mario Bros, but they couldn't get the screen scrolling to work because
Yeah. The platforms
um,
weren't quite powerful enough to support that kind of smooth gameplay.
no. Well,
No?
as John Carmack proved to us back in the day, you totally could.
Okay,
It
sure.
just took the brain of John Carmack to figure out how to. So people hadn't gotten the hang of screen scrolling on
Mm.
non-specialized hardware yet when this was made,
But
and
Super Mario Brothers Special is cool for us because it actually incorporates a few things from Donkey Kong. I think it's got the hammer power up and a couple
yeah,
enemies.
it's got
Yeah.
the hammer power up, some returning enemies. It's got like the springs, and it's got some other unique power ups. It's got like a wing power up that allows you to fly, which is really just swimming in above ground levels,
Mm. That's
and
how
some other
Balloon Fight did it
things.
too.
But it doesn't really, like I said, the screen doesn't scroll, so you do screen by screen across the levels, which, given the way the levels are set up, causes some issues. Like if you don't know a pit is there, you'll just spawn into it unless you're in mid jump animation and stuff like that. Yeah, it's fun. It can be frustrating, and actually was like the first version of Super Mario Bros. I ever played back in the day, because for God knows reasons why the local YMCA in middle of nowhere Iowa had a Japanese PC with Super Mario Bros. Special on it.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I don't know. And yeah, they also did the aforementioned Donkey Kong 3 Daigakyushu,
Mm-hmm.
which was more of a straight shmup without the platforming elements.
Mm.
But yeah, they just did those sorts of things. Yeah.
Yeah. To directly answer your question, Banana, the PC 8001 version was, this is an NEC computer that was neither the least powerful nor the most powerful to have this game ported to it. So it's just kind of a middle of the road version. Not that remarkable, I guess, but anyway.
It's always neat to get a new version of something actually like shared online so everyone can appreciate it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. It's really cool to get new game preservation news in 2021 for games that were released in 1984.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and sometimes these new dumps come with like manuals and stuff. So that's always cool too. Like this one came with some scans of like packaging and whatnot,
Oh yeah.
which we didn't necessarily have before. I don't know if we had, but we definitely didn't have them for this version before. So it's
Mm.
cool to have stuff like that because you never know what sort of new info and stuff will come of that.
Mm.
Was there any new
So,
renders hiding in there?
yeah. I don't believe so. Yeah, just taking a quick look at this article, there wasn't any new art or renders or anything.
Bummer.
But
Those are my fave.
It's cute though.
yeah,
It's that old squat style of Mario and Luigi.
yeah.
Anyway, third news item moving on because we got a big topic today. Pauline is in a new game again.
Yeah.
So we haven't had an episode to cover the pre-release for Mario Golf Super Rush, and now it's out now. So
yes, I was wondering if we should have done the game for like our next episode, but they revealed like at the literal last minute on like the Treehouse segments at E3 that there's going to be like a new Donk City stage coming in DLC along with some other stuff. So I was thinking
that's right. It's not in the game yet, is it?
Probably go more in depth on that when that DLC actually comes out.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yes, Pauline is among the starting cast. She didn't have to wait till the DLC roster this time.
Like she did in Mario Tennis Aces.
Yeah, she's got another new outfit. She's got a 6 super move where she whips out her mic stand and uses it as a golf club. I'm sure that's not tournament legal, but like other characters,
it's not good for
worse
sound
stuff.
Quality either.
Charge and Chuck literally just picks up the ball and throws it. So I think she's doing pretty well as far as actually using things like a golf club goes.
For
so.
sure.
Yeah, I think in Mario Golf Super Rush, it's kind of like pro wrestling. You just make the referee look the other way, and then you can do whatever you want.
Oh,
there's segments where you're just shoulder barging your opponents out of the way as you run to your ball.
Yeah. That annoys me so much in pro wrestling, especially when they acknowledge that like broadcasts exist. There was an episode where Jericho came out and MJF was like, "Oh man, did you see what happened last week? Sammy Total," and Jericho just cuts him off and goes, "Listen, we all watched the episodes. We know what you did." It's like, okay, but why don't the refs have instant replay? Why? Oh well. But yeah. I'm not even sure there are refs in Mario sports.
There's gotta be, right?
I mean,
well,
the only
Mario
time there's
was a
ever
ref
yeah, exactly.
in the original tennis, and
the only time there's ever refs, Mario is the ref, and he's actively participating in the sports. So there's got to be a conflict of interest or something.
Mario Tennis 64. There's the umpire who looks like Mario. We decided that was Stanley, right?
Yeah.
Remember?
Yes, because he's wearing blue and white.
Right,
exactly. Yeah.
But I think that's... is there a Toad in later ones as a ref? I don't know.
There might be. I don't know.
The Mario Party thing that you're thinking of? Because I know, like, Toad is very refy in that, but I'm not sure in, like, specific sports games.
Yeah, I don't know. There's so many sports games.
So that'll do it for news until we get to cover Super Rush in more detail in a later episode.
Yeah.
Just quickly, we did have a couple of YouTube comments on a previous episode. So I noticed episode 20, which is the one where we talked about a hypothetical arcade-era collection of games, an All-Stars pack.
Right.
There was quite a lengthy comment from a user called T, who said they came from Courtney's Twitter, who Courtney, of course, did our new thumbnail art of Cranky at his gramophone. Lovely stuff.
Yes, you can check her out at Alter Mentality on Twitter and Twitch and various other places.
And on that note, you'll notice on the current episode, we have an addition to that, which is art by BananaMeteor herself of Donkey Kong and the Golden Banana. Lovely stuff. I love that too.
Is.
Anyway, T had a lot of things to say about the episode, which was nice. I think the main thing I'll pull out from it is their suggestion that an arcade era collection with a framing story of it being Cranky Kong's birthday to give some context to revisiting the past in that way, which would be fun.
Yeah.
We also had a comment from Orson Zed who asked if Foreman Spike was in the arcade version of Wrecking Crew, and I think I responded to the comment, but I'll also say on air that Spike was completely replaced in the Versus version with Luigi. Even if you're playing in one-player mode, then the comm just takes over as Luigi.
Slight correction. The Versus version came first, so Spike is actually a replacement for the loss of Luigi in the console version.
Good call.
So Spike takes up that role that the other player controlling on the opposite screen and appearing in your background would take on the arcade machine.
Cool. Right, so with all that out of the way, let's get to the topic that BananaMeteor brought for us today.
Yes.
Donkey Kong 64.
64.
And I'm glad that I get to bring this. I am surprised that you guys have not talked about it yet, but I guess that makes sense because it's not really an N64 podcast, but hey, here we
Well,
are.
there is also a surprising amount of arcade era content to talk about, as we
There
have
is.
somehow gone through a lot of it and still have a lot left to do.
Hmm.
So.
Do you want to talk about your history with the game, Banana?
I definitely played it when it first came out, and I've always really enjoyed it because it's so much like Banjo-Kazooie, and Banjo-Kazooie is one of just my favorite games ever. And 3D platformers in general I find delightful, and I know that it has quite a few collectibles, but I kind of enjoy having all those goals in a game. So, I definitely have a positive experience from it, and I will go to bat a bit when people really really are hard on it. But I at the same time I do understand that while it's a fun experience, it is a flawed experience.
Well said. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I have a similar experience myself. When I played it as a kid, I think it was before the age where I knew how to judge whether something was good or bad. And as a result, I let Donkey Kong 64 into my heart, and it stays there to this day. On a recent playthrough a few years ago, like you said, those flaws do show up, and then they're noticeable to a mature eye. But I did still enjoy sort of the chill experience of sort of the checklist-based gameplay, just running around, going back and forth. Yeah, it's a different kind of experience to other games in that genre that you might enjoy, but there's a lot to like in it itself.
Yeah, I definitely think there's more good than bad in it overall. It's really fun to run around those environments in a 3D space, and like the characters are great, the enemies are great, there's tons of humor. It's one of the first instances we get to see K. Rool like actually being a character in the games. Like I know he was obviously a character in the cartoon show, but this is the first time we see him like actually doing stuff in the games. Like there was a little bit of talking in DKC 3, but this like in you get those little vignettes in between areas in Donkey Kong 64 that really just they didn't need to be there. They're just there so that K. Rool gets to go ham being a Bond villain, and they're great.
Yeah, and he gets to have a presence throughout the game.
Yeah,
like even in 3, like you said, he's a twist villain in that. He doesn't show up until the very last minute.
Yeah, that's a good point.
In this one, he's more like, Gruntilda in Banjo. Showing up to taunt you throughout the game kind of thing.
Yeah, and like his ship is literally just looming over DK Island. You really can't ignore it, and it just plays up how comically evil he is too. I love his bear and his little claptrap pet. It's also
yeah, it's so great.
Yeah. So the first thing we should cover about the game, given the focus of this podcast, is the DK Arcade connections. And the very top of that list should be the port of the original Donkey Kong game that's completely fully playable here.
Yes.
So when you get to Frantic Factory, which is, the fourth world? Oops, I should have had the Mario Wiki page open already.
Third or fourth? I think...
I
think that might be the point in the game where you can kind of start deciding what order you want to do some of the stuff in.
I think Lumi Galleon is 4 and Frantic Factory is 3.
Correct.
Yeah, that sounds correct.
Nailed it. And to operate the machine, first of all, you need to visit Cranky Kong Ask Donkey Kong and learn the ability to pull levers via drinking a magic potion.
Yep.
I can't believe that's not a name.
Yeah, this is kind of the height of absurdity that gets pointed out about this game, is that Donkey Kong needs to drink a specific magic potion in order to be able to pull a lever. It makes no sense, but that's how the game is.
I'm pretty sure the game lampshades that too.
I'm sure it does. But once you get there, you pull the game and it zooms into the arcade cabinet, which is there, complete with the artwork on the front from the original cabinets. And you start playing the game. So tell me about the game.
Well, first of all, this isn't an emulation. It's not playing a ROM. They
Right.
reverse engineered the arcade game from the ground up because this was still during the period where there were some legal rights disputes and whatnot, and Nintendo did not have rights to the arcade game code.
Amazing.
So Rare built this from the ground up.
Wow, I didn't know that. That's a lot of work.
Yeah.
Because of this,
I was wondering about that because
yeah.
just quickly, because you can also play Jetpack in the game, the complete game of that, Ultimate's first Spectrum game. And I'm pretty sure that is done in an emulator because Steve Ellis created a Spectrum emulator and inserted it into GoldenEye 007.
Ooh.
And I think they're probably reusing the same code for this because it's sort of dummied out in GoldenEye. But people have hacked it and made it accessible. But yeah, here it's a full game feature.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, so they rebuilt the Donkey Kong arcade.
They built it from ground up. It is not one-to-one faithful to the arcade game. It has... I'm not super hard into the different versions, but the way I've seen it described on the Donkey Kong forum is sort of a hybrid between the arcade game and the NES game.
Okay.
So they obviously could have had access to the NES game to look at as a base and sort of adjust to give it arcadeisms, as it were. The art is pretty faithful though, because that's easy to replicate. But yeah, as far as gameplay is concerned, it's leans more towards the NES game than a pure arcade recreation. It's still really good.
Unlike the NES game, it does contain the pie level, or the whatever that is. Nobody can agree. Yeah, sure.
Is it not a pie?
No. So it's all construction based. So they're like, if you've ever seen them laying concrete, it comes in those sort of, I don't know what to call them other than pie tins, because now pie tins is stuck in my brain. No, it's not a pie. It's a little thing of cement. It's
a cement pie.
Fine, whatever. But yeah, it's not a one-to-one recreation of the arcade game. But it was for a very long time the best way to get an experience close to the arcade game without like going through MAME or something.
Yeah, exactly. There are noticeable differences that even a novice to the arcade game can pick up, like the fact that you only have one life to work with.
Yeah.
You have to do it all in one go. And the fact that Pauline, unfortunately, she's our favorite character, was replaced by the N64 coin as the object that you're trying to rescue.
Yeah. But I believe that's only on the second playthrough.
Oh, true. Yeah. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
You do have to do it twice.
Banana first
time. And I know a lot of people swear it gets harder the second time, but yeah, I don't.
Does it not?
No. Your brain just fell into despair and gave up. I'm sorry.
My goodness. So did you guys struggle with this one? Like, am I crazy, or is this just?
I did not, but I know I'm an oddball in this respect.
Okay.
I'd never played it before, so yeah, I found it tough, especially with the 64 joystick.
Yeah, because
2D games aren't great with that kind of joystick.
That is correct. It's not.
When I was growing up, the N64 was my first video game console. My first game was Diddy Kong Racing, so I had almost no experience with the old stuff. So when I first went to Frantic Factory, I couldn't even get the golden banana. So I was just like, okay, we're skipping that one and we're moving on with the rest of the game. And lo and behold, I make it all the way to Hideout Helm, and I get to this door, and I'm like, I don't know what this token is. How do I get this? And then I had to like look up on the strategy guide, and I was like, oh no.
Oh no.
So this was a hard stopping point for me as a kid, and I never was able to beat it until I came back to it as an adult, like 5 years ago.
Wow.
So you never got to the boss fight?
I never did it as a kid.
Oh my gosh.
That boss fight's hard as a kid anyway. My first console was an Atari, and my first game was Donkey Kong. So, um, yeah.
But you would have only known 2 levels then, right?
Uh, eh, that's true. I don't even know if I ever got past the first one, but I played it a lot.
Nice.
I don't claim to be good
Oh,
at games. I just
that
I played
reminds
a lot of
me.
them.
So the level progression is different in Donkey Kong Arcade between the Japanese release and the US release,
That
right?
is true. I'm trying to
So
remember
is it
which
the
is
US
which.
one where it's like you go 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, and then you have to play a
I
few loops to get to the final stage, I
uh
think.
I I think
I
it
don't remember.
actually does. It goes 1-4, and then
Oh,
one
okay.
two four, and it keeps
Sure.
putting more middle ones in, so that each subsequent run you have more things to go through to get to the end. Whereas in
Mm.
the Japanese one, you just cycle 1-4.
Which is how
Uh,
this one works as well.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I could be wrong, but that's what I'm remembering.
Mm.
So
So
yeah.
this is an interesting thing just to exist in a Donkey Kong game because it means that Mario is playable in a Donkey Kong game, even if it's abstracted one level. But then going back on that point, in the fictional universe of the Donkey Kong game series, the Donkey Kong game also exists as a game. How does that work?
Oh,
Cranky always refers to having been in a game.
Absolutely.
Like,
Like all the Kongs have, fourth wall breaking meta awareness that
yeah,
they're in a
so and
game,
that's just kind of how you have to roll
especially
with it. I
Cranky.
think if
Yeah.
you try to actually analyze it too hard, you're missing the point where this is all sort of supposed to be on like sort of a Looney Tunes level of meta-ness,
Yeah.
where
This is
where
my
the
point in bringing it up.
they are both the characters and the actors who play the characters sort of
Yeah.
thing. Um,
Yeah, and they especially play into that in the final sequence, which again, BananaMeteor wouldn't have seen. But if you get 101% in this game and then beat it, you get a final epilogue scene where there's all the characters are sort of auditioning for the sequel.
yeah,
Yeah.
they're
well, I
trying
did
out
it as
for
an
the
adult.
GameCube
Don't
game.
worry. I came
Mm.
back and I did it. I did it on the
Mm.
Good.
original
Yeah.
hardware, but it took me a very long time to
Yeah,
do that.
I wasn't it. We recently found out that that final like auditioning for the GameCube game scene would have been like the extra bonus scene for doing all the stop and swap stuff. Uh,
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
Right. Of
Because we
course.
didn't even learn till recently through Paul's interview that stop and swap was like heavily implied to happen in DK as well, right? Because it was kind of
Mm.
Banjo
Well,
missing.
we knew that it had something to do with Donkey Kong 64 because I think people had found something in either a decompile or noticed some other stuff, and there was some code leftovers or something that suggested that like the ice key was going to interact with Donkey Kong 64 or something like that.
Mm.
Um, so and I do recall because there was some speculation a few years back on the forum about like oh, is the reason Lanky has a lot of like Banjo-Kazooie adjacent moves because like you were going to be able to bring Banjo-Kazooie in via stop and swap or
Oh.
something.
I've never
Oh.
heard that
And
one. I think the only one I've heard is I've seen the beta image where the Banjo-Kazooie freezer is in Donkey
yeah,
Kong
yeah.
home.
Yeah, the Banjo-Kazooie in Donkey Kong 64 thing wasn't like any serious speculation. It was just sort
Mm.
of a like, oh, I wonder if this is the case and sort of thing. Because there are a lot of things in Donkey Kong 64 that are sort of like, oh, that's this thing from Banjo-Kazooie.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Now,
Um,
do they share the same sort of engine at all? Because this was kind of like two different teams
I
for a lot of us, right?
That's a good question. I don't actually know.
I would assume so. It's a different team, though. The team that made Donkey Kong Country 1 and 2 moved on to Banjo and did
Hmm.
Tooie. But I think it's the DKC3 team that moved on to DK64.
Yeah, I
But
want to say that's correct.
yeah, in the same way that sort of 3 would have reused 2's engine, I'm sure
Hmm.
that 64 here reused Banjo's engine in some way.
Oh no,
Yeah.
it's definitely reusing thing because Tiny is reskinned 2D.
That
Because
makes sense.
there's a cut thing from Banjo-Kazooie where 2D was going to be playable on a second playthrough, and you have to
Oh,
go through the
cool.
game again as her. but it got scrapped. And for Tiny, like all of her base animations and stuff, it's just 2D from that scrapped mode.
Wow, I never knew that.
And is
Amazing.
there any images that exist of that, or is that just
I
purely?
don't know. Like we have confirmation that that was totally a thing that existed. I don't know if there's any images of it whatsoever.
Huh,
But,
Mm.
poor Tootie. And then she got shafted super hard in Banjo-Tooie.
the poorest of souls.
Only
Um,
exists on a missing poster.
But she
mhm.
showed up again in Minecraft, I guess.
Yep, she did. Now she's back in Smash.
Yeah, some other minor banjo connections that I thought to mention. Tiny's ammunition for her crossbow is red feathers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Throwing oranges is a main mechanic in DK64, which is sort of maybe a reference to Conga from Mumbo's Mountain. You can see the instruments from the banjo intro in Candy's instrument shop.
Oh yeah.
So the xylophone and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
The other one that people thought for a long time was that Fungi Forest was a cut world from Banjo that then got ported into DK64. Now, I don't think that's actually true. Because
Really?
there was
I thought
this.
that was true.
Well, there was this idea of a world called Fungus Forest in Banjo, but I thought that was sort of leftovers from when it was a 2.5D kind of
Hmm.
action platformer.
And I thought it
But I'm
wasn't
not sure.
just Fungi Forest. I wanted to say like not Crystal Caves, but maybe one of the other ones was also from Banjo-Kazooie.
This is one thing I wanted to bring up about their differences is the design of the worlds. A lot of Banjo worlds are sort of one big central landmark, and the rest of it is built in a circle around that.
Right.
Whereas something people have noted about Donkey Kong 64's level design is that it
Mhm.
has a lot of hallways in between smaller hub areas, and some people bring this as a weakness or a criticism of DK,
Mhm.
but it's, I don't know, it's just kind of a different approach. But yeah, are any of the worlds in DK that kind of hub based thing, do you think? I know a lot of the smaller hub areas in the levels have that circular design. I'm thinking like the lighthouse in Gloomy Galleon or the giant mushroom in one of the Fungi Forest rooms, or the barn, that kind of
Oh,
thing.
I'm looking at some stuff online, and there's some other connections there, like the the puzzle for Click Clock Wood
Hmm.
that you have to fill in with jiggies, and has the little sort of video over, has textures in it that aren't in the final game, but are in Fungi Forest and Donkey Kong 64.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, and some other little things like that.
Yeah, I think if we're gonna pick a level that's most like Click Clock Wood too from DK64, it's Fungi Forest. So
Yeah.
Hmm.
maybe there's just some crossover between stuff they were working on that. Who knows?
Yeah. I'm sure we could dig into that more, but
Yeah. There's one more small thing I wanted to mention about Banjo.
Mm-hmm.
How they have a different approach to certain things. In that recent playthrough, I noted that, you know, Banjo has a lot of humor through text and dialogue, whereas
Mm-hmm.
Donkey Kong 64 has a lot of humor through its animations. All you have to do is jump in a tag barrel and,
Mm-hmm.
just watch them frolic to notice
Yeah.
that kind of thing doesn't really happen in Banjo at all. But in DK, it's like, you know, you're playing a cartoon and there's a lot of squash and stretch animation and characters doing silly things with their bodies. So yeah,
I
I thought
wonder
that
if
was
that's
interesting.
because they were more familiar with the hardware, because I know Conquer has a lot of that too. A lot of that, like,
Yeah, that's
Well,
true.
Conker has both. Yeah, it's the best of both worlds.
yeah, for
Mm.
sure. I love Chunky's animation in the tag barrel. It's so
Yes.
so
Who,
much
me?
personality.
No. Pick someone else.
Please pick Tiny. Do not pick
and
me.
and when you're not hovered on him, he's like flexing in the back and stuff.
Or if you hover over him and then move away, he's like, "Whoo, pick me."
I love Chunky.
Yeah, he's great.
Yeah,
I need
it's
to
pretty
bring
great.
him back.
I'm still kind of annoyed that they were like, "Oh, Chunky and Tiny, they're not Kitty and Dixie. They're siblings." Yeah. And it's like, you could have just said they were the same characters. Like I know there was some mandate, but whatever.
Was there a more concrete reason that they didn't bring over those beloved characters from Donkey Kong
So
Country? Well,
at some point early in development, there was some mandate that like, hey, only use characters from Donkey Kong Country 1. But even that got broken later in development when they brought in Wrinkly. So,
Mm.
like Chunky and Tiny were obviously the sort of like Kitty and Dixie XPs.
Mm.
But
yeah,
then, like, I don't know why they
It's
weren't just
strange.
renamed to Kitty and Dixie at some point.
Because you do have, like, Shuri, the starfish, is in the game, and Puff Top,
Yeah, there's
and
the entirety of
Clobber.
Gloomy Galleon being a love letter to
Yeah.
DKC2,
Yeah.
and just
Um,
stuff
I
like
think
that.
in the files of the game, there's a recoil from 3, but they
Yep.
cut it from the final game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think like if they had been like Kitty and Dixie, you could have just sort of like as far as the designs go, a lot of people just sort of hand wave the N64 designs anyway because like I think aside from Candy, none of them really stuck. Like Funky obviously doesn't go around in fatigues or and the red tinted sunglasses and went back to like his DKC3 look, but like I think people would be a lot more fond of Kitty these days if Chunky had been Kitty, you know. And
Okay, I can see that.
it would work with the way Rare had been known for sort of aging up the characters and having them go through growth.
Mm.
Like
Mm.
you had this arc in the Super Nintendo games of Diddy starting out as DK's sort of not necessarily bumbling but weak little sidekick and then coming into his own and becoming his own star. And then you had sort of like Dixie proving that she was just as good and like having to go like joining Diddy on adventure and then going on her own adventure while babysitting. And so I think having Kitty go through that sort of like, well, he was being babysat the last time we saw him and now he's grown up and he's a lot more capable and can like act on his own without needing a babysitter sort of thing. I don't know. It would have been in line with other things Rare had done if
Mm.
they'd
yeah.
wanted to.
Especially when these characters that they did create have so much in common with the characters they shelved. So it's just
Yeah, they
Mm.
really do.
Yeah, in the final, judgment on the game, I like how it expands on Donkey Kong's world.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is just a little odd that you have characters in the game that are essentially one-to-one equivalents to ones that already exist.
yeah.
Um,
It was really nice being able to explore all the specific areas in DK Island and kind of learn more about the.
Yeah.
mm,
No, that was really fun. And I know like a lot has been said about like, oh, it doesn't match up with how it looked in the Super Nintendo. And yeah, I don't care. I was having the time of my life running around. The waterfalls, golden bananas. Oh, banana! Like it's losing my mind. It was great. It's great.
Yeah,
It's a good game. I know it's got
it
some
is.
problems, but it's a good game.
I agree. I'm with you.
Nothing quite beats running around the DK64 overworld. Yeah.
There's a few ways I could take this discussion, but I want to get the rest of the arcade era stuff out of the way, I think.
Sure.
And then we can just talk about whatever we want about the game.
Yeah.
So I've got a few minor notes that I noted about how this game connects to the arcade era. We talked about Jetpack as being playable in there.
Yes.
This is, again, a very early Rare game when they were
Mm-hmm.
releasing games under the title of Ultimate Play the Game.
Yeah.
It's not one we specifically cover, but there is a tangential connection. We do cover the Saberman games,
Mm-hmm.
which are also from the same era when Ultimate was doing a lot of stuff on the Spectrum. When Rare made a kind of reboot of Jetpack called Jetpack Refueled on the Xbox 360 Live Arcade,
Mm-hmm.
Will Overton did a new frame art to go around it because it's 4:3 on a widescreen system. The same way he did for a lot of Rare Replay games, actually.
Oh, nice.
And in that artwork, there's references to other games of that era, like Alien 8, and
Ooh.
also Saberman is there.
Nice.
Yes. So Oh, in Nuts and Bolts, Hero Clungo Saves the World also had similar framing art, if you remember that.
Ooh.
Anyway.
I
Okay.
don't remember that because I still haven't played Nuts and Bolts.
No, don't listen to the detractors. It's
Oh,
very
I
fun.
own it. It's sitting behind me. I'm gonna get to it.
Nuts and Bolts is essentially the Donkey Kong 64 of Banjo.
It really is.
Yeah,
And
that's a good way of putting it, actually.
in the same way where I like DK64, oops, I also like Nuts and Bolts.
Yeah.
It's
I've seen other people go through it. I just haven't played it myself, and I haven't obviously like experienced the whole thing because I haven't sat down and watched someone play the whole thing. But what I've seen of it, it definitely looks like the sort of thing I'd super enjoy.
Yeah.
So Frantic Factory has Robo Kremlings, which
Mhm.
are mechanical crocodile men with
Mhm.
big golden keys in their back because they're clockwork.
Yes, yes.
Just
Oh.
like all the mini Donkey Kongs and stuff that
Yeah.
come into the
Frantic-
Arcade Era Legacy
Frantic
games,
Factory
Mario
in
vs. Donkey
general,
Kong.
and just factory worlds in general in the DK series tend to harken back to the arcade games as well, just in their set dressing and aesthetics. So,
Yeah. Are there any red girders in Factory? There's one in DK's Treehouse as a reference, along with Cranky's Gramophone.
well, there's definitely some conveyor belt sections. So,
Yes.
There's no girders. I think it's all like more futuristic mechanical in a way.
Yeah.
yeah, definitely more so in DK64. But yeah, that is the world where the DK arcade game is physically sitting as well. So
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the factory levels are often a venue for arcade references because in Returns as well, you get 25 meters in the background.
yeah,
In the Tropical Freeze factory world in the Juicy Jungle, you get the greenhouse from DK3 and Stanley's blowgun.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
The factory world in Returns also has a bunch of Donkey Kong Jr. and isms in it from Mario's Hideout.
Oh, yeah.
So
The Spark enemies. Yeah.
yeah, and just general aesthetics and whatnot there.
Yep.
So.
Let's see. When there's a Chunky Kong challenge in Crystal Caves where you're inside an igloo or something, and these little flame guys pop out. They have little feet and sunglasses.
Mm-hmm.
But I wondered if that was a reference to the little fireballs in Donkey Kong.
Ooh, I could see that. Also, that's one of my. I was watching a friend play Donkey Kong 64 the other day, and they had been struggling a lot on the rabbit race in Fungi Forest, and had wandered into another level to get away from that, and came across that igloo, and the golden banana in there is rescuing the rabbit from those little fire guys because it's like tied to a TNT barrel, and they just were like, you know what? I don't need that golden banana, and just walked out of the room rather than save the rabbit.
He deserves it. Okay, here's one. Donkey Kong 64 reuses some mechanics from the arcade games.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, in Country, you're throwing barrels a lot, which is carried over from Cranky or DK Senior throwing barrels at you. It's very minimized in this game. You mostly do it in a couple of boss fights, and otherwise it's quite minor. But a big mechanic in this game is pulling out a gun and then shooting mostly fruits, which mirrors the use of fruit as a projectile in Donkey Kong Jr. Will you give me that one?
You know what? Sure. Why not?
All right, moving on. Sorry.
Nope.
From the guns. I'm sure you guys know this story, but I love the story how Ray was supposedly showing off
yeah.
to Miyamoto. And they, I guess, just maybe left over from GoldenEye or whatever asset they had. They just had Donkey Kong pull out like a real life gun, and Miyamoto immediately grabbed a piece of paper.
Shotgun.
Oh no! And drew up the coconut gun and handed it to them. So used to running around with that prototype, they're like, "Oh yeah, that. I mean, like we probably would have done something like that, but yeah, that makes sense."
Yeah.
That is a great story. Yeah, exactly.
I wish I could play the version where Donkey Kong's just running around shooting the poor little beaver.
The beavers deserve it. Uh,
Yeah, Beaver Bother gives everyone nightmare flashbacks.
mm,
All right, one more little reference, and then we'll do the big one.
Okay.
The Creepy Castle music track, and again, the music in this game is by Grant Kirkhope.
mhm,
Some of the tracks are actually reused from Banjo-Kazooie Project Dream stuff.
mhm,
The Jungle Japes music is a remix or a rearrangement of David Wise's DK Island Swing from Donkey Kong Country.
mhm. Which is legally obligated to be in every Donkey Kong game.
Of course, yes, absolutely. The Creepy Castle track quotes bits of music from DK Arcade, like the intro sort of jingle, and Bach's Toccata and Fugue, which it was also used in DK Jr. as
Yeah.
a jingle.
Ooh, I hadn't caught that. Nice, nice.
Okay. So the big one is, of course, the relationship between Cranky and Donkey. We're on record on this podcast as, following the logical idea
Yes.
that the Donkey Kong in Rare's games is Junior, who's grown up.
Yeah, the one that's supported by Nintendo themselves and shows up in all their tie-in media
Yeah.
and manga and everything.
Like, it's kind of a frustrating debate because so many people take all the grandfather references as like unequivocal evidence that there is a missing generation that they invent.
They take the wrong thing from the
Yeah.
even you know what? They take the wrong thing away from that because like there could be a missing generation. That doesn't actually matter and isn't what anyone's arguing. Like they seem to be thinking like, "Oh, there's a missing generation." And it's like, "Okay, sure, why not?" That doesn't mean that current Donkey Kong is not Donkey Kong Jr. They seem to think the fact that he's a grandson rather than a son means he can't be Junior.
They're like, oh, Papa does not equal grandfather, therefore they are two separate characters. And like Junior died or something stupid.
I didn't realize how strongly people feel about this until I was on an episode of the Conversation talking about Donkey Kong Jr. in Mario Kart Tour, and I was like, oh well, he's included in the game in such a way to suggest he's a variant, and the only character currently in the game he could be a variant of is Donkey Kong. Ergo, they're the same character. And Heil was, just tickled pink by that, and I got so much hate in the comments of that video for saying that.
Feel free to tell me if I'm wrong, but I've always been under the impression that of course Donkey Kong is Donkey Kong and Cranky Kong is also Donkey Kong, but
Yep.
I thought that Cranky Kong was Donkey Kong Jr.'s father, and Donkey Kong Jr. was Rare Donkey Kong's father. And maybe I'm wrong.
That's certainly a reading of it. I want to say the original intention, and this is what's in like the tie-in mangas, was that Junior grows up into the Donkey Kong who you were playing as in Donkey Kong Country. That could have been retconned. I know there's a couple sources that say, "Oh yeah, Junior is the father of the current modern
those
Donkey
sources are only taken from the fan theories.
Yeah, I know. I'm just gonna say there's sources, and that's an entirely different official media pulling from wiki entries discussion.
So basically what you're saying is that in Mario Kart Tour, Donkey Kong Jr. and Donkey Kong both being there is like the equivalent of like Mario and Baby Mario.
I mean, yeah, kind of.
And they've already done that in Mario Tennis.
I was gonna say,
yeah.
I was gonna say it's more the equivalent of the character that was introduced alongside Donkey Kong Jr. was retro sprite Mario, because this was a like throwback retro tour. So they introduced like retro SNES sprite Mario and SNES sprite Donkey Kong Jr. at the same time, and SNES sprite Mario is a variant of Mario, and Junior has a retro qualifier next to him, which all the variant characters have. So it suggests that he's a variant of characters already in the game,
Okay.
which is what my logic was with that
I
reasoning.
mean, I can and the only reason that I was under the impression that Donkey Kong Jr. was Donkey Kong's dad is because that's what I was told. So,
Mm.
And yeah, like I don't want to say you're wrong out of hand. That's definitely the way to read it, and like as we have been saying, the continuity has been muddied due to things like the grandfather and father thing, and various sources saying different things, and Miyamoto saying multiple conflicting things in different interviews over the years, and all sorts of stuff that's up in the air. Again, like what I said earlier with the like, oh, Donkey Kong the game exists in this Donkey Kong game. It's don't think too much about it. Don't worry
it's
about it. Have fun.
apart, and then we were picking it apart. But it's fun to do that anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
The debates give the community life.
Yeah. As long as you're not calling me a communist sheep, I don't care.
Yeah,
I don't-
devolve into
I would-
personal
yeah.
attacks.
I don't know how I would make that connection.
Well, I think I'll say that the only time that Nintendo has ever officially talked about the relation between DK Jr. and modern Donkey Kong is comments out of Nintendo Europe on official sites at the time saying that they were the same person, and that's in line with the way Rare was viewing the relationship at the time. They mentioned that in scribes and stuff.
Okay.
For me,
Miyamoto gave some interviews that were hosted on
I don't listen to
Nintendo
that guy.
Japan's site. Okay, fair
Sorry.
enough. He said he at least views them as separate things, but it's unclear. Like the way he's talking about it, it's unclear whether he's saying they're different characters or there's different like. If Donkey Kong Jr.'s there, it's like a Donkey Kong Jr. thing versus if modern
It's
DK's
like
there, it's a modern DK
Classic
thing.
Sonic and modern Sonic.
Yeah, exactly. And I have issues with that too.
Well,
but
yes,
don't worry about
yes.
it. That same interview, that interview is a bit tricky to translate because unless I wildly read the things wrong, he also says Lanky Kong is everyone's favorite boyfriend. So,
I mean, that's a given, of course.
yeah, I know, right? It's just he's just stating the obvious. It's fine. But yeah, Miyamoto's also gone on to say like, "Oh, I'm Mario's mother, like I'm Bowser Jr.'s mother. What are you talking about?" So this is a man who just has fun with his interviews.
yeah.
So
Big canon today.
As far as DK64 goes, I do want to say this: the smoking gun, logically for me, is that
yeah.
Donkey Kong starts Donkey Kong Country as an established video game hero, and there's no way he can do that without having had a prior video game adventure. So, but deeper than that and more sort of emotional is the relationship between Cranky and modern DK makes more sense. It has more context, and it's more emotionally fulfilling if you accept that they're the same characters who interacted so much in the arcade era. There's even a kind of direct reference to that in the ending of DK64, where Cranky's walking back to the Banana Horde and DK's kind of waiting for him because he's shuffling slowly. And he picks him up on his shoulders and runs off with him. And I think that's a really touching character moment, as well as being a reference to Junior holding Senior above his head in the ending of DK Junior.
Yeah. No, that's my views on it too. Like, even if it weren't explicitly stated in a couple different places, as far as just in the games are concerned, these characters and their relationship makes a lot more sense if they are Senior and Junior.
Yeah. That's my view on it too. Thanks.
I mean, you guys know more than me, so I'm not here to.
I mean, you could be. That's fine. You...
No.
No, your opinions are equally valid, and I was happy to hear your theory on it. That's an interesting one.
If you have compelling arguments, we're willing to listen to them. And hey, I've changed my mind on this podcast before about things.
Yeah, and
when presented,
Gibbon has a theory that the Donkey Kong in Mario vs. Donkey Kong and Jungle Beat is actually senior in his younger years.
Oh.
Yeah. Although I have come round to the idea that it could also be Junior in his younger years before Donkey Kong Country,
Oh, yeah.
but I still think
I like that.
it works better as Senior just because of the, again, interpersonal dynamics on display.
The
So
youthful Cranky Kong used to look exactly like DK.
well, yeah, and that comes from an era where they were standardizing character designs across different series. Another example that from that time period at Nintendo was Bowser Jr. and Baby Bowser from the Yoshi series used to look distinct and different, and then during that sort of GameCube or the later GameCube slash GBA era, they got standardized.
Yeah,
and
in Partners in Time, you see
Partners in Time,
Baby Bowser with a bandana that
Baby
looks
Bowser.
exactly like Junior's one.
Yeah, and stuff like that. So they kind of homogenized a lot of designs. So Donkey Kong Senior is starting to be represented as looking nearly identical to modern DK is just sort of par for the course for what Nintendo was doing at the time.
Huh. This is all
Yeah.
new info, so I'm just absorbing.
Yeah, I've too long didn't read. I put way too much thought.
It's
into
a huge can of worms. As you can see, Donkey Kong 64 is the one that kind of opens the can of worms because
Yeah.
you have references in country games to Cranky being DK's grandfather. He explicitly calls him his son in this game, and this seems to be a kind of
Yes.
retcon or clarification on their relationship from Rare at this time.
Yeah, I think sort of off the record, I don't know if it's in Scribes or just on Twitter or various other places, some Rare people have said, like, yeah, we realized we'd mucked it up a little bit and we were trying to correct course.
Yeah, so given those
but
comments,
then,
it seems
yeah.
like this was their intention the whole time and they were just making it more explicit in this game. But because there's now a disconnect between those references and then references in Returns, which are just quoting lines from the first country game, it's all muddled. But this game is really significant in the timeline of that debate because it's the point where they try to course correct, but then not everyone accepts that, and it's a mess.
Yeah, it is indeed a mess. Nintendo mostly steers clear of specifying one way or another, but you do get a couple more recent comments at least, because I know there's been sort of a popular, well, I don't know if popular, there was a sort of, for a while it seemed like Nintendo had adopted a like, oh, there's just Donkey Kong and Cranky is this separate character sort of thing. But like you had events in the previous Smash game, like one of the events was like, oh, Donkey and Diddy have been sucked back into the 80s and now Mario's chasing the wrong gorillas because he thinks they're the past versions, sort of things. And it's like, oh, well, this suggests that modern DK is not Donkey Kong Sr. and stuff like that. Just, yeah.
Okay, well,
but
on that note, that wraps up the arcade era connections I could find. So now we're pretty much open to talk about other stuff.
Thank you for keeping us on topic, as it were.
That's okay.
I'm just like taking notes over here, like,
SpongeBob meme. Write that down. Write that down.
Well, there is one thing that BananaMeteor added to the notes here, which I think is a really good talking point about the game. We've touched on it already, and we're all fans on it, but in certain circles, the game gets a lot of hate. And so she's posed this question, is that hate justified? What parts of the game are, good or bad, open to critique? So what do you think about that?
I absolutely agree when I think people complain about there being a bit too many collectibles in this. I think one common fix that is suggested a lot that I agree would be nice is if you could just change characters anywhere in the overworld without having to get a tag barrel because it
Yeah.
can be very frustrating to come across a lot of bananas that are not the color that you're in, and then when you backtrack to the barrel, you find different ones, and
Yeah, I don't necessarily think it's a problem of there being too many things in the game to collect. It's more just that the character switching is gated off into these very specific points, and you have to backtrack a
Hmm.
lot and you can't pick stuff up as you come across it. Basically, is the
you have to
issue. So you'll
just like a very up to date mental map with where things are.
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
and
When I replayed the
yeah,
game recently, I referred heavily to, I think it was the Nintendo Power Player's Guide, which has maps of all the levels. It
mm-hmm,
Yeah,
just helped me
yeah.
to visualize where I needed to go and which
Mm.
characters needed to be in which places.
Yeah, and there's so many instances of like, oh, I opened up this area as chunky, and there's tiny bananas
yeah.
inside this area that I couldn't get into before, and now I have to go back to the other side of the level where the tag barrel is, and then come back with tiny if I want these 5 bananas,
Yeah.
Mm,
sort of thing.
The blueprint
yeah.
enemies where you can only collect them with a
Mm-hmm.
certain call.
Yep.
Hmm.
Yeah. Which are especially annoying if you're colorblind.
Oof.
Um,
Yeah.
Are you colorblind?
yeah.
Oh my, this game is a nightmare for
The
you.
It's mostly fine. The blues and the purples, if the lighting's not great, kind of look the same
Oh,
though.
and the lighting
So
was wild in this game. This is when they're experimenting with
yes, it is.
dynamic
Yeah.
lighting and colored lighting systems in the 3D spaces.
there's there's definitely been a few times where I'm like, okay, coming back with like, oh, this isn't
Oh
like
Oh,
no. What a bummer, Gibbon. I'm so sorry. This is a really rough one to
it's
be colorblind
it's
for.
fine. It's fine. Yeah, it's I grew up with it. I'm so used to it. It's fine.
Yeah.
yeah. People like to point to the collectible bloat as a weakness of the game. The fact that there's 5 different characters that you have to switch between all the time. I like to rebut that by saying that, Banjo-Tooie also has 5 different character states
Yeah.
that you play as. You have Banjo and Kazooie together, you have Banjo and Kazooie alone each, you have the transformation, and you have Mumbo.
Yeah.
Um,
Yep. 5 characters per
but to be
world.
fair to that argument, those individual character states are more contextual and limited. In this one, all 5 of them have equal
Hmm.
status.
Yeah, I think.
That's
No,
more
go ahead.
interesting to me in this one because um don't get me wrong, I like Banjo-Tooie, but like I think specifically being Mumbo is just such a slog because all
Yeah,
that Mumbo can
yeah,
do is he has a bad attack and he
a
can
bad
go
jump.
a bad jump and he can go to his whole purpose is just to show up to the Mumbo magic.
He can't climb ladders. That's a problem in Pterodactyl Land.
Mm,
You need to show up to his little pad and you press B, and that's it. He doesn't have like interesting moves, and it would be so much
Mm,
more fun if you had these because like he's a character who can use magic. He should have the most fun move set. The
hmm.
sky is and they don't
absolutely.
really utilize that at all for him. So the fact
Mm,
that the Donkey Kong characters have these like beautiful, vast, wonderful move sets, like I feel like each
Mm,
character has like at least 3 different exclusive moves is
mm.
great.
I I think if they I don't necessarily mind the Kongs having robust movesets. I think the main problem is like you have to go learn the same thing for each Kong a lot.
Mm,
And
yeah.
they felt the need to do moveset parity across. So like if one Kong has like since one Kong has like 2 disparate specials, all Kongs need to have 2 disparate
Mm,
specials, and it feels kind of like why do all of them some of it just ends up feeling extraneous. And I
yeah.
think either if they made like music pads unique to one
Okay.
character, or something like just lessened it a little bit, or done a approach where each world has you play as Donkey Kong through the entire thing, and then each world has another Kong in it that functions as sort of like the Mumbo transformation, where they have a fleshed out move set, maybe not as fleshed out as Donkey Kong, but they still have a lot of unique things they can do, and the puzzles in that world are centered around them, sort of thing. And then, of course, in the final world, they all come together, and you got to use a bunch of different ones and stuff.
Right.
Yeah, no,
I don't
that's an
know.
interesting idea.
There's ways they could have streamlined it a
Yeah.
Mm.
bit.
And I think the way that you're framing that makes Hideout Helm and the final fight against K. Rool even more fun, because then everything's finally coming together that way. And
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are segments of the game that really focus on playing as a Kong to get through a part that's linear,
yeah.
which doesn't have the backtracking problem that the rest of the game does. And you also mentioned how each Kong has a robust moveset. I think that's a good thing, and it makes them distinct and fun to play as, but I don't think their abilities are integrated well enough into the challenges in the worlds.
Yeah.
Like a lot of
that's my main issue.
A lot of the way that you unlock something or achieve something is like how Mumbo worked in Tui. There's a pad with their face on it that you just have to walk up to. Unsatisfying contextual based interaction, where only that specific character's gun or instrument will open this thing.
Right, or just like a million different mini games where you just fire melons at something. And
the mini games.
Yeah.
This Donkey Kong 64 has a problem with mini games. It relies on them way too much as a way to give you a golden banana. It's not doing something in the world that then rewards you with it. It's doing something and then doing a mini game. And the mini games are bad. They're not fun. You know?
A lot of them are repeated too. They're normally not unique. And I think it would have been way more interesting to like find an NPC that lived in that world who like gives you like a little quest or like something's going on there. And instead of like these very disconnected mini games.
Hmm.
And they should have just made the Yamagobi.
Yeah, why not?
Why not? Yeah.
It is Gobi, essentially. It's just not Gobi.
Yeah.
Angry Aztec is such a strange world. All the other ones seem to fit in the context of the DK Isles, but that one just seems like it's a million miles away.
Yeah,
it's strange.
It's not really like connected to the island. It's just like this floating house that you go in and you're like,
I would counter argument that it fits very well in with the temple ruins from Donkey Kong Country 1, and that's likely what they were being inspired by. But they went with sort of different like Mesoamerican ruins than the ones they used as reference in Donkey Kong Country 1.
Donkey Kong Country 1s are they're a lot less deserty, right?
Yeah, they're more
like Machu Picchu than like
I was gonna say Cambodian, but
either or.
Yeah, and then that gets expanded on in Donkey Kong Land 1 with the Kremlantis stuff. But they went for more Aztec in Donkey Kong 64, which I think they were just sort of like, oh hey, we did like sort of Mesoamerican ruins type stuff in Donkey Kong Country 1. Let's do that again. Only they went with like a desert theme for it. Which is probably why I conflate that world and Gobi's Valley a lot in my head.
Yeah, maybe it would have felt more cohesive to me if they had gone with a more DK C1 style to it visually.
Yeah, like maybe put these temple ruins in like the middle of a jungle clearing or something.
Yeah,
something like
the whole game is a lot cartoonier than the country games by its nature.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
it's got a lot of that googly-eyed inanimate object thing going on.
I think it was a lot more influenced by Banjo-Kazooie since it just came so close to it.
Yeah, probably.
Can I bring up another thing that influenced it?
Absolutely.
So the Donkey Kong Country cartoon in 1997 was a French production, a CGI cartoon, mainly based on the first game, but with a pretty different kind of universe.
Yes.
But it really caught on in Japan, which again is another thing that influenced later depictions and Smash Brothers and stuff. But it also caused Rare to have a look at it and feed back some of its original elements into 64. So
yeah, that's an understatement.
Well, the two big ones that stood out to me were the crystal coconuts. They're a collectible in this game that power your special moves, whereas in the show they were the sort of main MacGuffin that was an all-powerful single artifact. And the fact that Cranky is like a potion master now. He's a mad scientist who brews up all kinds of magic potions all the time. That's definitely directly taken from the show.
Yeah, and that's an aspect that has stuck around through like returns and whatnot.
Um, I thought maybe Tiny's outfit was a reference to Dixie's outfit in the show, which is kind of a blue shirt with a flower on it.
She's got that sort of flower girl overalls look going on in the show.
And that would make sense since they're such similar
Um,
characters.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and again, Tiny just being
Yeah,
Dixie,
yeah.
basically.
There's also K. Rool being that recurring antagonist who's a bit goofy but a bit threatening, and his sort of roster of baddies who are his lieutenants.
And him having pet Claptraps.
Yep.
Although they serve a different purpose in the show, but yeah.
Yeah, K. Rool feels a lot more comedy driven in this one. He kind of feels a bit bumbling, but in like a fun way. So probably pulled from the show.
Yeah, this pulled from the show a lot in good ways. Like, I don't think it's a bad thing at all that happened.
Yeah, I think there's mixed feelings on the show at this point, but I think the inspiration that that the game pulled from the show is kind of timeless stuff that just feels.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought of another one. The musical numbers.
Yeah.
The show always has the characters breaking into song, and this game starts with the DK rap, of course.
Ooh, you're right.
DK rap.
Man, what a strange thing of its time.
I'm glad it's there. It really makes it feel like such a 90s experience.
Yes.
It really sets the tone for the game.
Yeah.
Just booing up and having that play. It's got the fourth wall humor, it's got the bombasticness, it's got the just it introduces you to everybody, it has shenanigans going on in the background.
The way that it adds to the context of the game, it introduces you to the characters and their characteristics.
Yeah, it's such a clever way to start it too. Just immediately you're like, oh, I know who these people are, I want to rescue this guy, he's great. The rap.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And of course I like that ukulele brought that back too as well.
Yes, the YL rap.
I like that it actually made it in game in Impossible
Yeah,
Lair.
I liked that too. I was surprised that more people didn't talk about it before then. I think a lot of people just missed it because there was no way to access it in the first game. You just had.
Yeah, I was a little surprised it didn't make it in
Yeah, that was
game
weird,
in Ukulele, but Ukulele has issues. So, like Donkey Kong 64, Ukulele has some issues, but is overall a wonderful experience.
I think I totally agree with that. Yeah. It's nice to see people kind of come around on ukulele now, now that it's been a few years, because I think when it came out, people were really sour on it, which was a bummer to me.
Yeah, there were, I don't know, I think they just had their expectations too high.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's one of the points I had under why people hate the game is expectations. A lot of people were expecting this to be such a momentous, a monumental, cultural landmark. And I think even DK Vine at the time
it kind of
declared it the best game ever on its release.
They sure did. Heil is so embarrassed by that article.
Yeah, but once everyone takes off their rose-tinted glasses, people didn't expect a Banjo clone from the first Donkey Kong game to be in 3D because they are so tonally different and different in gameplay.
I kind of feel like Nintendo was between a rock and a hard place with Donkey Kong 64 because Super Mario 64 and Banjo-Kazooie were already out. And let's be honest, Banjo-Kazooie is a 3D Donkey Kong Country game. It has so many Donkey Kong Countryisms in it. It has the buddy mechanic evolved into a new state. A couple of the worlds in the game are just blatantly Donkey Kong Country inspired. Like Bubble Gloop Swamp is the treetop villages from 1 on top of the swamp levels from 2 and populated with winky looking frogs and the flitter enemies from 2. And has crocodiles everywhere. And then later you have Freezeezy Peak, which is just pulled from Donkey Kong
K3.
Country 3, complete with mini bleaks around doing the same creepy laugh and throwing snowballs at you. and then there's just so much other stuff inspired by Donkey Kong Country throughout there. So it's like they already made Donkey Kong 64 basically. What do you do with the game that's actually called Donkey Kong 64? And then like we know from interviews that like they'd considered doing more of a Crash Bandicoot
Yeah.
type thing, because Crash Bandicoot in turn, like if you look at it, it's also basically just a 3D Donkey Kong Country game,
Kind of 2.5D
just of
action
a
based,
different, yeah, different scope. But again, if they'd just done that, it would have been compared to Crash
yeah.
Bandicoot
Oh,
rather than
also Crash
Banjo-Kazooie.
Team Racing directly
So
inspired by Diddy Kong Racing, by the
Oh,
way.
yeah, and just what they could have done for Donkey Kong 64 had kind of already been done by other people, and sometimes the other people were just them, and they were like, "Shit, we already fuck. What do we do?" um, so yeah, like what would you have done for Donkey Kong 64 to make it stand out and not just be like, didn't we already play
yeah,
this
which is a
game?
different.
So
But
yeah.
I like what they did, of course.
Mm,
The N64
Mm-hmm.
is the 3D platformer console. Everyone was super hyped on it on
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
64, and I think
yeah.
everyone wanted to make a game like that many times. And Rare definitely did. But
Yeah.
I mean, great. I prefer that to the linear stuff of Crash. I don't know about you guys, but
yeah, I do. Yeah.
maybe it would have
Yeah.
stood the test of time better, at least in people's eyes, if they had made something more linear like Donkey Kong Country, just because those are so beloved.
Mm. And that was the identity of the
Mm.
series that had been established by Rare up to that point. So this was seen as a bit of a swerve in some ways.
Yeah, like they could have also just done a higher resolution 2D platformer,
Yeah,
like
but that
Mischief
wouldn't have sold.
Makers.
People at the time were really down on 2D stuff. Remember how Symphony of the Night was
Yeah,
being
yeah.
derided and
Yep,
Castlevania
I was just
64
thinking of that.
was being
Uh-huh.
praised?
Oh, look at PlayStation, the weaker console who can only handle a 2D
It was
Castlevania game.
Bigfoot.
That sure aged well.
Everyone
Yep.
wanted these 3D
Um,
environments. 2D was just this archaic
yep.
way that games weren't going to be anymore. Even today, Metroid Dread getting announced, people online
Oh,
being like, is
God, yeah.
Nintendo allowed to charge $60 for a
Oh
2D game?
god.
And it's like, yes, they are.
Yeah, well, those people can
That
go take a
same
long
discourse
walk without
happened
the
around
short
Donkey Kong
gear.
Country Returns and Tropical Freeze. And
Yeah,
it's nonsense.
it's
Yep.
crazy that people consider these games that are a different genre to be lesser. Like,
Mm.
it takes a monumental
Hmm.
amount of work. I don't know why people assume that it's more work to
Yep.
make things in 3 dimensions. Like, not always.
Oh, yeah, no, tell me about it. I work in game development. I hear this all the fucking
Yeah, something
time.
I've heard is like I don't remember the exact thing, but like a level in Donkey Kong Country Returns has the same amount of polygons as the entirety of Metroid Prime 3 or something like that.
Yeah.
I believe it. There's a ton going on in the
Yeah.
background of Returns. And that's not to say Metroid Prime isn't a great game, because it is. It's just a different amount of resources because they're different
For sure.
things. So yeah, like I don't know what I personally would have done sitting down and going, okay, how do we make Donkey Kong 64 stand out? And like given that, hey, we have this 3D collectathon engine and we're the 3D collectathon people, so let's just do bigger and better and more so
Yeah.
with it. Like I don't think that was an incorrect choice.
Well, Rare didn't
So
make any 2D side-scrolling games for the N64, right? They made 11 games, and I don't think a single one is 2D. Correct me,
and I
but
think yeah, almost all of them are collectathons in some
or
way, shape,
or
or form. Like obviously you have
yeah.
GoldenEye and Perfect
Blast
Dark,
Core.
but like
I think it's
yeah,
just because
Blast
at that
Core.
time you were dead in the water if you chose to do something 3D. Like I know you brought up Mischief Makers, but like Mischief Makers is not a big name on that console. Like we know,
And that is a crime. Like people should be taken to jail for not loving
right?
Mischief
But
Makers.
at the time, nobody wanted to play it. Crazy.
Yeah.
Those people are wrong.
I agree with you. I totally agree with you. It just wasn't gonna sell.
And it's such a Donkey Kong Country game too. There's like you race around on ostriches, you have animal buddies. There's a fight that is basically the kerosene fight
Oh
from the
yeah, you're
GBA
right.
DKC2, except done way better. It's
Yes.
way better in
Yes.
Mischief
Yes.
Makers. And like it's just there's even like the Cranky Kong analog character. It's a Donkey Kong Country game. I was speculating that if you wanted to reskin it as Donkey Kong Country 4, you could replace Marino with Lanky because he'd still have the sort of like aerial maneuvers and stretchy arms.
Yeah,
Um,
sure, why not?
or just Photoshop Lanky's head onto Marino, and now he's got pigtails and a nice figure. Um,
Many entirely of spheres.
mm.
So we were talking about Rare kind of copying themselves or trying not to copy themselves. Something you brought up to me recently, Gibbon, is the character of Snide in the game and how
Yes,
how it relates to Conker. Can you talk about that?
he's just a professor.
Mm-hmm.
Like so you have this weasel character who is the inventor sidekick to the main villain who is mistreated and secretly plots against them and leads to their downfall. And the other character is a professor. like and it's like, am I talking about Snide or is the professor? Oh, I'm talking about both of them. And like I'm pretty sure Chris Evers confirmed when I poked him about this that like, oh, that character, I didn't actually have anything to do with it, but it's one heck of a
It
coincidence
sure
is
is.
what it is.
It's just a really
Um,
similar model too to the weasels they had in Conquer.
yeah, well, the weasels they had in Conquer are based off of the weasels from Who Framed Roger Rabbit, which in turn are based off of the weasels from The Wind in the Willows.
Oh,
So if Snide was sort of drawing from the same inspiration,
Yeah,
yeah, I can see why they'd look similar.
I didn't know that.
But it's just
Long line of
um, so it's just sort of a drawing from similar backgrounds sort of thing. But yeah, it's you basically have the same character in two places, and it's just one of those things in Donkey Kong 64 that makes it feel connected to the rest of Rare's N64 output like that. Because they did, this was the generation where they sort of started doing that big interconnected shared universe thing.
yeah.
So that just helps it make more feel like it all takes place in the same world again,
mm.
Right, which is why
whether it was intentionally or not.
I think if you're a fan of the game like DK64 or Banjo, you kind of just find yourself playing other Rare games as well because there's so much in common with all of them and there's so many
Mm-hmm.
references to each other.
Yeah, yeah. They had a lot of bringing back older properties and reimagining things for new era on the N64. We were talking about Jet Force, or we were talking about Jetpack or Jetman. God, that series has had a lot of names. Jetpack. We were talking about Jetpack earlier because that's the one in DK64.
Mm.
And I read recently that Jet Force Gemini was explicitly going to be like in the same series as Jetpack and
Oh,
Jetman, which is why it's called Jet Force.
that makes so much
um,
sense.
yeah, it does, and it's just like, oh wow, that's amazing. So,
Yeah, I've just been
just one of
playing
those.
Tamer in the prequel to Jet Force Gemini.
Yeah.
Oh god, I need to go back through and play that again. My file got corrupted, so I haven't actually
Oh,
finished the
damn.
game.
Perfect
Yeah.
thing. Are you enjoying it? Do you like it?
Yes, it's I I like it. It's got two, not to delve too deep into it, but it's got two distinct playstyles that it kind of swaps between, and it goes from sort of a like 3D Donkey Kong Light to a more explicit Jet Force Gemini type thing with the ant enemies from Jet Force Gemini.
Yeah.
And it has a banger of a soundtrack by David Wise, which is way better than it has any right to be. So
I'll definitely have to pick it up. It's been on my Steam wish list for a while, and I'm just like, I'll get it eventually.
definitely do it.
I have it.
Yeah.
It's really cool. It's relevant to this discussion because Richard Voucher is part of the team who worked on the game, and he was an
Oh, that's
artist on
true.
Donkey Kong
Yeah.
64.
you
Also,
go.
Kev Bayless, who we mentioned earlier, did some character concept art for the game, as well as Steve
Yeah.
Nails.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Huh. Neat.
And yeah. Yeah.
And it has
yeah,
monkeys
it's
with
just-
guns.
It does have monkeys
Something
with
we know
guns.
Nintendo loves. We love it.
Oh man. I did a little comic that was like the different moles from the Banjo series. Like, oh, I taught them how to do the beak bomb. I taught them how to do this. I taught them how to do this. And then the little hedgehog in his leaf pile from Tamarin, it's like, I gave them a gun.
It's kind of funny that guns find their way into a lot of rare games in some way or another. Like even Banjo-Tooie, they're like, "Up, we gotta get the first person like FPS stuff in there." And they
Kazooie
did.
is a gun.
Yeah, like,
Yeah.
yeah, circling back a bit.
Mm.
Yeah, I don't think they made an incorrect decision to just go a bigger and more so 3D collectathon. But I I don't know how anecdotal it is. I've read in a couple places that there were some, I don't know if development problems are the right term. There were a couple like different starts on this, or they had to revise things a couple times on this. So I don't know if maybe the game didn't get quite as much polish and revision as it could have,
Mm.
because me talking about it, decades later with the benefit of hindsight and modern design sensibilities, going, oh yes, I would have streamlined this and maybe cut some of these areas and just
Yeah. Like you said, it
um,
definitely captured the zeitgeist at the time where the collectathons were getting bigger and more complex.
mhm.
But you can see that there were development problems just by how glitchy the game is, don't you think?
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
Someone who
I don't.
knows how to break the game can do crazy things like swimming directly through the ground, falling through a ledge, and just going out of bounds really easily. There's these things called moon jumps.
I'd like to point out
Okay.
that a lot of that is down to Rare optimizing the heck out of their games for the hardware.
Oh yeah, yeah,
And the fact
absolutely.
that their N64 games don't emulate well for these reasons. So like the moon jump isn't super easy to do on
No,
original
it's not.
hardware. It's much easier to do on the like virtual console releases because
No, it's the other way around.
they Are you sure?
Yeah, because the moon jump works because Rare implemented this feature in the game where if the game is lagging, then it increases your speed to compensate for that.
They account
So it doesn't
for
feel
the console
slow,
lag.
which is really
Right,
clever.
okay.
And then when they ported the game to the Wii Virtual Console, the console has more RAM. They were able to play the game without any lag, and some of the glitches therefore don't work. It also messes up some of the mini games. Some of them are downright near impossible because in the original release, like the timer slowed down slightly as you progress in a mini game, and it cuts it
more going on.
Yeah, and it cuts it much finer when the time is running at actual speed in the Virtual Console release. So yeah, that's a problem.
Because again, they built for the hardware and its limitations. Rare was really good about that on the Nintendo stuff, which is a shame. You don't really have to do that on modern consoles, and I'd love to see them putting like, I don't know, the Series X or whatever we're up to at the moment, up to its absolute limit, but in this era of just like, and here's the Series X 0.5 with even better specs. Then it's like, there's no point in optimizing to that degree. So
I'm definitely not the most skilled gamer as evidenced earlier by my inability to beat classic Donkey Kong. But I will say that like I have done moon jumps on original hardware, and
cool.
I know we keep comparing it to Banjo-Kazooie, but just if you compare the speedruns of these two games, like Donkey Kong 64 has so many more glitches than Banjo does. Just the speedrun for Banjo is almost just you almost just kind of play the game. There's very little sequencing skips, and you can beat.
I think they found a big one recently, actually.
Did they? I'll have to look.
Yeah.
I know that
Anyway.
you do some levels out of order. You like do Bubble Swamp last for some reason, but you still do all the levels. And meanwhile, DK64, you can beat that game without ever picking up a golden banana. You can just like kind of like
that's
right into
true. The way it checks stuff, it kind of assumes if you're entering some of the later levels that you've met all the prerequisites and just fills in stuff.
Yeah.
So like if you like clip your way up to, is it Frantic Factory? It just kind of assumes you've done the prior levels and stuff like that.
Yeah, how like getting to K Rool, it only checks for like key number 3 from Frantic Factory and like the last key or something. And I don't even think you have to.
Yeah.
I think they've broken it further. It is a pain game to watch speedrun.
And if you go into the king cutout battle, it just gives you all the Kongs automatically
Yeah.
because why wouldn't you have them at that point?
Right.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
speedrunners and that kind of thing can really break the game when they know what they're doing. But even a casual player can encounter bugs that can really impact your experience. Like there's a certain thing if you go into the multiplayer mode, and we haven't talked about that, but there's a whole like arena fighting multiplayer mode where you can actually play as Crusher as well, which is interesting. But you have guns by default in that, and there's a way that you can leave that mode and go back into the main mode and suddenly your guns are unlocked, or you suddenly have infinite coins, which I have encountered on my save.
Just to illustrate how boring I am, I never encountered any of these glitches, and I didn't have any friends, so I never played the multiplayer mode.
I had brothers, so I did. Did you ever encounter the robot fish glitch? There's like a bug in the game where after a certain point of progress, Diddy has this challenge in Gloomy Galleon where you enter the mouth of a giant robotic fish and then you shoot at like its heart behind a propeller.
Yeah.
It's for some reason like your bullets slow down at a certain point and then you just can't do that challenge in time. And that happened to me as a kid and I tried it so many times.
Wow.
It's something to do with the lag or I don't know what, but
so I watched a video on this. I know what you're talking about. I think when I hit each level, I did everything that I could before I left the level because, of course, I was playing this as an adult most recently, and I never actually beat it as a kid. But yeah, that's a bizarre one that can almost just like you can soft lock yourself out from getting 101%. You just
exactly.
Yeah.
And it happens when you skip it and leave it for later, which I did because it was hard enough at the time.
Weird. No, even as a kid, I was a stubborn little thing and just kind of went down the checklist of like, do I have everything? No? Cool, I can't progress. It's against the law.
Yeah. I'm very much like that still.
But yeah, this would have been a nightmare game to bug test. So things like that would slip through, I guess.
I don't know if they had a hard release date for this one too, because I know at the time they were really pushing back Conker's Quest, 12 Tales. So they probably needed something on the shelves.
Yeah, that's the reason Diddy Kong Racing exists, so I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah.
Well, Diddy Kong Racing exists as it does, but yeah.
Oh, yeah. Speaking of racing, there's one thing that as soon as we started talking about the concept of this episode, that BananaMeteor brought up that she wanted to talk about.
There are a lot of really terrible races in this game, which you think they would be better.
Don't say.
You think they would be better from the studio that made Diddy Kong Racing and Mickey Speedway, but they're not. They're bad.
They are super bad, and I was actually thinking about this when watching my friend play the other day, and a lot of the races have multiple things going on. Like you both have to win the race and pick up a requisite number of like coins or MacGuffins or
so it's like
during
the silver
race.
Coin challenges of Diddy Kong Racing.
And I think if it had been one or the other, like, collect a number of these things on the way down the racetrack and beat it before time runs out, or race this guy and get to the finish before them, it would have been fine.
Yep.
But the fact that every single one of them is both, and both of those objectives are difficult.
And they're so forgiving. You can miss very little of these tokens before it's like, gotta do it again. Didn't do it perfect.
It's frustrating. Yeah, I tried to count up how many races there were. You race the buzzard on your jetpack as Diddy and the owl. You race a little RC car as Tiny, which RC Pro-Am reference maybe.
Could be.
You race a seal in a little boat, and there's also a running race against the rabbit, and the slide races against the beetle.
There's 2 races against the rabbit because the rabbit goes, no, that didn't count when you beat him the first time. And it gets harder the second time.
So with all these awful demanding races, which one is the worst, do you think?
That's a running theme in the game too, where you'll do something once and the game will be like, no, you gotta do it again. That wasn't good enough. I
personally think the second rabbit race is the worst one.
I'm gonna say the beetle. The sliding mechanics because not only do you have to pick up all the tokens and go fast, but there's multiple points in that level where you can go out of bounds and you just instantly lose.
That's super fair. That's super fair.
Yeah,
but
that's
you
really
can
rough.
actually win that one though.
My least favorite was
Um,
always racing the owl because Diddy's jetpack mechanics are not the best, and you
mm,
combine that with trying to gauge the. You have to fly through these hoops, and your depth perception is not always the best. So then you have to reverse and
mhm.
go back through them, and it's I hate
Yeah.
that.
This game would have been ripe for like a 3DS port because like you would have had depth perception going on. They could have ironed out some of
remember,
these kinks
remember
and
the
fixed
rumors
some
about
bugs.
Camelot making DK64 2 on the 3DS?
Yeah, yeah. I think this race with the seal is actually really good. Like I like that race.
Mm.
Oh, weirdly, I think I like that one too. I think the boat mechanics are really satisfying though, and that's what I had the whole
Yeah, it's
with.
it's a very Diddy Kong Racing sort of race.
Yeah, maybe it just reminded me of the hovercraft a lot, which is why I liked it.
Yeah, I don't know.
Plus, you get a seal with a little pirate outfit, which is very cute.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's basically just Clapper, right?
Yeah,
Very
pretty much.
similar.
The fact that we're like, oh yeah, this one's good and the rest of these are fucking horrid says a lot.
Yeah, for sure.
They're not great.
Yeah,
They're just
that's the low light for sure. Well, one of the low lights.
You have to do the rabbit races while like doing a handstand as Lanky, right? And I remember that being a little slidey.
mm.
Mm.
It is a little slidey, and also like he just starts running, and you can't like you have to jump in the barrel and activate the thing, which takes time and puts you far behind
Yeah.
right off the bat during that second race. Which is one of the reasons it's so dog shit. And like to the point where it's like guides online are like, here's how to glitch it so that you start in the barrel and pop out when the race begins. And it's just stuff like that. It's bad. It's super bad.
The game's so glitchy, you have to glitch it in your favor to win.
Yeah. I have no idea how I ever managed that as a kid.
So, what are the highlights of the game then? What's some of your favorite
um I do like all the new characters and new enemies. There's not a complete cast of new enemies, but all the enemies are great in this. I like the redesigns of critters and crushes and clump and whatnot. I like all the new enemies, and I like even just seeing the naughties on the N64, varying sizes and shades of blue, was kind of great and amazing.
The enemies have such
Uh,
fun sounds in this too. I don't know why, but it just makes me so
yeah.
when I hear the naughty.
They have a lot of personality. I like they have like idle animations and stuff. Like
Yeah,
seeing the clumps just sort of like get out one of their explosive oranges and snack on them and have like their explosive burp and stuff like that, or
sure.
the Kasplats going around flexing and doing the fist thing and whatnot. And just like I think this game among all Donkey Kong Country games, like this is the ones where the Kremlings have the most personality. Like I can tell what these characters are like. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Mm.
and you really know what
Um,
enemies are in the area too from just listening because
yeah.
it's so distinct.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's how I found half the Kasplats just running around the level, and I'd hear one of them off to the side and be like, "Oh, hey,"
There
sort of
it is.
thing.
Yeah, I think that happened to me a lot too. I like punching through grates is chunky. That feels awful.
Ooh,
Uh,
yeah.
Yeah.
I like the horrible sound that Troff and Scoff make when you feed them bananas.
Oh God.
Uh,
We haven't
Oh
talked about
man,
Truff and Scoff.
Troff and Scoff are such. I don't know how their designs got past
Whose
Nintendo.
idea
Like
was
they
it to
have
give them nipple
rings.
rings?
they remove the nipple rings before they got in the game. I think that was like an early.
Mm,
I don't think the nipple rings made it in, but they are very.
Oh, okay.
mm. Those renders are still in like the guides and manuals and stuff, though.
Fine them with that.
Um,
I love the boss fights in this game. I think they're so fun. Great.
yeah, no, they're great. Like Mad Jack and Dogadon and Armadillo. It just,
Mad Jack is
Very
like
I
memorable.
think,
Yeah.
so fun.
yeah, so fun, and even just like as little sense as I think it makes to have like Funky be a gun nut in this game. Like
It's charming.
they should have swapped Snide and Funky. Funky should have been the mechanic with the weird inventions, and Snide should have been the weapons broker because he is. But anyway, even like his design, Funky's design is still cool and fun looking in this game. Like he looks great. All the Kongs look great for the most part.
Candy makes me comfortable, but
Mm,
Well, I would argue she's kind of supposed to. Like, I don't think Candy's ever actually supposed to been like sexy and alluring. I think she's intentionally making fun of super sexualized characters.
now,
yeah, kind of
But
a parody.
yeah,
do her and
yeah.
Donkey have a thing? Because I know in some games he has like a framed photo of her in his home. So like,
Like yeah, they're supposed to be like, I don't know if officially dating, but yeah,
but then
that is
she flirts with everyone in this game when you pick up
she sure
your
does, and she
quote
says the
unquote.
same lines to everybody, including Tiny.
Yeah, well,
Uh,
great, progressive, I guess. Thanks, Rare.
yeah, sure.
Definitely uncomfortable though. I guess it's
Yeah,
not really uncomfortable in the way you really pick up on as a kid though, and then you replay as an adult, and you're like, oh, well,
yeah, the
Yeah.
camera definitely has that male gaze thing when you first meet
Hmm.
her, and it's sort of like slowly tracking over her. And then there's the really gross thing in the final boss fight where she comes out and starts posing so that K. Rool gets distracted, and he's
Yeah.
like leering
Yeah.
over her. It's
yeah, that's weird.
it's bad.
You're not wrong.
I still think it's a better character design than the leotard from the first game.
The pink leotard.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think the DKC2 GBA design of her is actually pretty nice.
with the ball gown.
Yeah, they stuck her in as sort of like a Vanna White on Swanky's Sideshow, which still isn't the best, but it's better than the outfits they've had her in previously.
Maybe Payon had the best design.
Yeah, I generally agree to that.
I feel like Barry from Conquer has always kind of struck me as is more so of that character archetype where it felt more self-aware, where they're like, okay, we know that this is a little like silly, but like this is the
Hmm.
girlfriend that Conquer would want because like he's kind of a shallow guy.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
Candy doesn't read that as much to me, which I think is why it comes off like a little creepy. Why you have these scenes,
Hmm.
K. Rool being like, "I'd tap that," and you're like, "Weird, I'm 10."
Well said. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. You're right. But yeah, there still is a lot of good and great in this game. Like I was gushing on about earlier, it's great just running around the world of Donkey Kong Country in 3D
Yeah.
and seeing stuff.
Hmm.
I love the
And
music. That's a given though with Grant.
oh
So
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And yeah, I like how it expands on the world. You have the new
Mhm.
NPCs to meet, and places to visit and run around in. I think the traversal
Yeah.
is a lot of fun.
I agree.
Yeah.
hmm And it follow like it continues the story of the previous games. Like the reason there's this mechanical Crocodile Isle fortress is because the actual Crocodile Isle sank and stuff like that.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's tightly woven in the continuity. Lovely stuff. What's everyone's favorite world? I noticed that's a point in the document we haven't really covered.
Yeah. Hmm.
I,
That's a tough one.
I think I really like the day and night system in Fungi Forest.
Mm.
Hmm.
I find that really interesting, and I just like a kind of green looking level too. Green's my favorite color, so if there's like if there's a
Fair enough.
inspired level that's got fun mechanics, I'm there for it. I like the big tomato there.
Yeah.
uh.
It's got a good mix of light and dark elements too, because it's bright and colorful,
hmm.
but it's also got a lot of sinister spaces to it, especially when it turns nighttime. Like inside the barn, there's giant spiders.
hmm
Yeah,
This is where
Yeah.
you first do the minecart section in this game, which is a bit different.
Really? I could have sworn there were earlier minecart
Maybe, but
sections.
it's one I remember for sure. You drop down a well, and then you're being chased by a giant
Yeah.
skeletal ghost
Oh
crocodile, and
yeah, yeah.
yeah, it's all very spooky.
I don't think the minecart sections are bad. They're certainly more
Mm,
interesting than the this some of the mini games that don't feel very inspired, but I
yeah.
really
hmm
prefer them in 2D as a pair. Well, I guess I guess it sort of is also like you don't have freedom of movement in this, but it just works so much better as like a side scroller, so you can really get a handle on like what's coming.
Yeah, like
Yeah, I agree.
they also suffer from that. Like you're doing the minecart stuff and avoiding enemies and obstacles and watching your health, and you also have to pick up these coins,
Yep.
like
Yep.
which was the problem that the races also had. And it's one of those like pick one, focus in on it, and they also just kind of last forever.
They feel
Like
very long. Yeah.
they're very long. I think they could have split those up into like a couple different ones per track, honestly.
Hmm.
So I don't know. I tend to like the worlds that harken back to previous Donkey Kong Country games. So like Gloomy Galleon being just a giant tribute to DKC2,
Hmm.
or Creepy Castle kind of focusing in on
DKC2.
um DKC2 and like Frantic Factory, sort of harkening back to like all of the previous factory worlds and previous
Mm,
games,
mm,
Yeah.
and having some of that DKC or Donkey Kong arcade stuff in it as well.
mm. Yeah.
I don't know which one I'd point to, but then like what's I always get the name of that world mixed up. Is it Crystal Caverns?
Crystal
Just
Cave.
Um,
little caves.
Crystal Caves. Yeah, it's also that one's kind of harkening back to the similar level archetypes in DKC one, but it's also a later game world, so I'm not as familiar with it as I am with the first few areas, which I've been through a lot.
That one really
So
stresses
yeah,
me out until you get rid of the enemy that's knocking down all the icicles. That is a that
Hmm.
is
yeah, the Kasha, yeah.
yeah. But as soon as you do that, then I can really relax in that world. And that one
Hmm.
definitely has one of the music tracks I like more too.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. As we mentioned earlier, Angry Aztec's just sort of there.
It's no one's favorite. It exists.
And then there's the state mandated jungle worlds and just yeah.
Yeah. Which I like.
Yeah.
But I
And even Angry Aztec I wouldn't say is a bad world. It just maybe doesn't mesh with the rest of them so much coherently.
yeah, I agree with that.
We talked about this game, especially being popular in Japan and feeding back into media over there. If I could, I'd like
Mm.
to plug one little thing, which is the Donkey Kong card game. This is an official product from 1999 and 2000.
Ooh.
It's a collectible battle card game based on the cartoon, but its expansion brought in a lot of DK64 specific elements and characters. And I've been maintaining this sort of archive of images of all the cards and material about the game. So I'm going to link that.
Oh, nice.
Yep.
I have seen these pop up on my eBay searches through my just incessant quest to always collect more rare merchandise, but I had no clue what it was. So that'll be interesting to learn about.
Mm.
Nice. Oh, that's where that lovely artistic render of K. Rool yeeting DK into the wilderness and showing off his nice butt comes from.
Indeed, it is.
There's quite a lot of memes that involve Donkey Kong's butt. I think a lot of fans have a fascination with it. Back of the strategy guide, the cartoon meme.
I have to imagine Nintendo's aware of it.
Yeah,
At
Rare
least.
started it. They put out that
Yeah,
render
Rare
of
definitely
DK
did.
from behind. They knew what they were doing.
Mhm.
All right, we've been recording for 2 hours now. So, does anyone have any final thoughts about Donkey Kong 64 they want to bring up that we haven't mentioned yet?
Oh, there's just we could talk forever. We could talk about the like the German character profile stuffs where Tiny is a tax accountant,
Yes.
or like I brought up some of the Japanese interviews and stuff, which also have crazy character things. There's like all the adjacent things to the game, and there's so much of the game we haven't even talked about yet. Like it's could honestly just go on forever and ever, but I'm pretty sure my voice is going to give out soon.
Yeah, it is a
So
huge game and it's stuffed so full of stuff.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think a lot of folks are not willing to give this game a chance. these days.
Hmm.
It's a real ukulele nuts and bolts situation where there are a few very loud voices who have said, "Hey, this one's not very good," and this one's so similar to Banjo, which is just absolutely beloved, that I feel like at very least you owe it to yourself to give it a try and see if it's for you.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, there's a lot of things we've touched base upon which are not great, but there's a lot of really good stuff in there too.
Yeah, yeah.
I can't think of a
I generally
at the time that had better
no.
bosses. I just really can't. And
Hmm.
the fact that it lets you
Yeah.
access those from the main menu after you do them too is just a testament to like, hey, you're gonna want to replay this because it's great. And it's like, I am. Thank you.
That's very true. In general, I think this game's bosses are better than like any of the other bosses from Rare's N64 output.
Yeah. In 3D platformers, I think they always struggled to do good bosses, and these are some good ones, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And anyone struggled, I mean, yeah.
Yeah, even Nintendo themselves. But yeah.
Okay, cool. That was really an awesome conversation. I think we did justice to the game and the breadth of topics there are about it. And it was really fun having you here, BananaMeteor. Thanks so much for coming on the show and suggesting we discuss this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was definitely a little nervous just because I hadn't talked to you guys before, and I was like, I hope they think that I'm cool. But
you're cool. You're very cool.
I hope I did okay, and I'd love to
Yeah.
come back on another time if there's ever a relevant topic to discuss.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we will make up a relevant
That's what we did this time. Is there anywhere that people can find you online if you want to
absolutely
promote yourself?
I'm pretty active on Twitter, where I constantly retweet Rare related things or post new Rare things. It's all I do, and I'm pretty sure that's just like BananaMeteor on Twitter. So
okay.
sometimes I get fun new content. The other week, Ed Bryan sent me some bug sheets from Banjo-Kazooie, which I scanned in.
Yeah.
People. And I really wish I had this one to share because this one's so relevant. But I got my hands on a Donkey Kong 64 press kit VHS, and it's never been dumped before. So I just sent that off to Captain Bregal because I don't have this stuff personally with me to dump it, but I'm really curious what's on there. I don't know if it's like
nice
footage and stuff. So hopefully soon.
That's sweet.
We will be able to see
awesome.
That. Yeah.
Looking forward to that.
For sure.
Is there anything specific you wanted to plug?
Ooh, yeah, that's what I was going to ask.
Yeah, sorry.
Specific I wanted to plug. If you are using traps in your house that kill mice, don't do that. use the traps where you can catch and release them. Mice are friends. Go mice.
Fuzzy little friends.
Nice. Is there a specific brand of mousetrap that you would recommend?
Let me hold on. Wait, I'm gonna go to Amazon right now. I have one. I don't know what it's called. So please hold.
Is it the sticky kind?
No, the sticky kind I do not like at all because normally
they're horrible.
Normally the animals get stuck in there and they just die there. They cannot get out. They suck.
There is a way to dissolve that stuff, which I found out because I got my hand stuck to them trying to lay them out. Which you can do. The animals are kind of having a heart attack while you're doing that around them, though. So yeah, they're not the best.
Yeah, there's something on Amazon called the Authenzo Humane Mousetrap, and it's this like little green tube. You put peanut butter in one end, and they smell it, and they walk in, and it closes, and you just got them in a little tube, and you bring them outside, and yay!
And they've got some peanut butter to eat.
Yes,
looks good.
I really like mice. I have pet mice, and I'm sad that people are so mean to mice because I think they're little friends.
Yeah.
So
I'm right there with you. I kept pet rats for a number of years.
Oh, rats are so cool. I've never had rats before, but every time I have a friend with rats, I'm like, tell me about them. Tell me everything.
Gibbon's always retweeting rat pictures. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
I think I've retweeted some rat pictures that you have retweeted because they just excite me too. They're great.
Yeah, they're adorable. I can't like when I see rats in films now and they're like, "Oh, look, rats, creepy." And I'm like, "Babies."
It's so stressful when you see a mouse or a rat in a film because I would say there's probably a 70% chance that it's going to die. They're just like
Oh.
used as fodder, so
Yeah.
you see one and you're like,
I was
okay.
watching that scene in the one Indiana Jones film where there's all the rats in the sewer, and just having had rats, I can now tell that all of those rats are absolutely terrified
Aw.
and
Yeah,
just not having a good day. And I'm like, oh,
the poor guys. It's so funny when they do like the close up of the rat to like try to scare you, and it's got just like the biggest like cute eyes ever, and just like a little a
mm-hmm.
little adorable face, and it's like, is this scary
Yep.
to someone? Is it?
Yeah. Yeah. What's your plug for the episode, Milo?
Oh, yeah. So recently I've been revisiting the Fox Mutant universe, so the X-Men
Ooh.
movies, and I watched a lot of stuff for the first time, like Deadpool, New Mutants, the Generation
Mm.
X TV movie from the 90s, uh, the most recent TV series, The Gifted, but the one I specifically want to plug is the one that I enjoyed the most, the series Legion,
Mm.
which takes the kind of, I don't know, is a cliche to say that it takes like this superhero thing and turns it on its head. I don't know. It's just really weird and strange and interesting. There's a lot of new characters in it with new kind of powers that revolve around issues of identity, which is interesting. So it's exploring all these like complex issues and psychological things. And each new season completely upends the status quo and introduces a lot of weird new stuff to get your head around,
Nice.
as well as having kind of very interesting, set design and cinematography and stuff. So,
Huh.
yeah, that's a really cool show.
Are you are
Excellent.
you very into superhero media?
Not really. um, not in general, but I just became a fan of the X-Men movies and decided, hey, I'm gonna explore all the furthest reaches of this the way I like to do.
Okay,
Excellent. Excellent.
Mm.
cool.
Yeah, the reason I like the X-Men is because it's so often a kind of metaphor for real life um, people who are struggling with difference and discrimination and that kind of
Mm.
thing, which is why I got attached to the whole universe in the first place.
Mm.
But I guess one sub plug is that while watching all this stuff, I drew all of them in my pixel art style, and I have just recently published on my DeviantArt a huge collage of all the characters from all those series. So
Ooh.
yes, I'll link that as well.
Excellent. Nice.
Does everyone
Good
here
stuff.
do art? I feel like that's so common in the rare community. I don't know why. We're all like art
It is
people.
common. I have no art skills and I was never any good at it, but I realized that I could do pixel art kind of okay. So I've done a few
Oh.
rare pieces in that style.
I don't do art regularly. I went part of the way through art school before realizing I hate art school and would much rather be programming. So I switched over to a programming school, and now I make video games for a living. But I still occasionally do art pieces.
In a weird
So,
amalgamation
Mm.
of both of your backgrounds in art, I went to art school and I kind of got my interest in art by doing pixel art. My
Oh,
avatar,
nice.
ooh,
my avatar in here is actually pixel art that I made myself. So
Oh,
there
that's
you
so
go.
cool.
Thank
nice,
you. Fun.
good stuff.
I'm not like a pro at it or anything, but what got me really interested in art is I was on a Pokemon spriting forum where we would like we would
Ooh,
take parts of the sprites and combine them into like mutations of two
ooh, nice.
different yeah. So
I love those.
I was back at middle school and I was like, oh, I guess this is what I'm gonna do now forever.
Nice. Hmm. My plug of the episode is a light novel series that I think I might have talked about on here before. It's called My Daughter Left the Nest and Returned an S Rank Adventurer, which is a little bit of a mouthful, but less than some others I've read. About it's sort of half slice of life, half like fantasy adventure manga, and the two principal characters are a aging ex-adventurer father, Belgriff, at home in the rural townstead, and his daughter Angeline, who went off to the city some years ago and is now an S-rank adventurer that everybody relies on, and she's really annoyed because she never gets time off to go see her dad. And I've been reading it for a number of years, and just yesterday they announced that it is finally getting an official English localization.
Huh.
So that can be found at J Novel Club, and they have a few sample chapters up that you can read. And yeah, I'm just looking forward to that actually coming out in English and more people being able to enjoy it, and me not having to get the volumes in Japanese to read anymore because the people who were translating it stopped. So
Now, are you bilingual? Can you read Japanese?
I took several years of Japanese in school and have been kind of keeping up with it since then. I wouldn't call myself bilingual. I could probably carry on a conversation with a reference book next to me if I absolutely needed to. But I do some like translation stuff in my spare time.
Oh.
Like I'm translating some Getsufumiden material that never came out in English due to that series getting a resurgence recently and people being interested in some of the older stuff surrounding the original Japanese Famicom release that never came out over here. So,
Cool.
I
yeah.
I will have to check that out. I am not super into anime, but I'm surrounded by people I live with who are deeply in. So just kind of osmosis, I get a lot of anime in my life.
I probably should have plugged the Baraduke manga that I just translated.
Ooh.
Well,
Oops.
go ahead. You make
Okay,
the
I'll get to it. So Gibbon imported and scanned a Namco company magazine thing. Sorry, I'm not explaining this very well, but Namco put out this magazine in the 80s and 90s, and it had a little mini manga as a prologue to Bakutotsu Kijute, Baraduke 2, the space shooter, which the first one predates Metroid and has the same twist.
Yep.
So yeah, it's a little 4-page thing, not much, but I did my comic scanlation thing and replaced all the Japanese text with English and cleaned up the images and stuff. And yeah, now you can read
you did a good job with it.
Great. I love when folks share their collections like that. It is very frustrating to see someone who has like really cool stuff and they're like, I will not share this. And you're like, why? What made you this way? So neat.
Yeah, so that's a little collaboration that Gibbon and I did since she scanned it.
Wonderful.
Yep. I have a stack of stuff of that nature that I need to scan, and there's so much of it.
It can definitely be daunting, but I think people really appreciate it when you share new content that was not possible elsewhere.
There's a couple people in the Getsufumiden server going, "Oh man, have you scanned that stuff in yet?" And I'm just looking at the pile behind me. And I'm like, I'm working on it.
I'll get to it.
So, I think that about does it.
Yeah. Thanks again for having me.
I never know how to end these things.
Here, I'll end it with this. I unfortunately spent most of the time that I was drawing the picture in the thumbnail. I freehanded the N64 logo like an idiot because I rarely, if ever, work digitally, and I just forgot that was something I could import in. So after spending like half an hour on that, I was like, "What am I doing with my life?" But
no
there
way!
it is.
It looks so good.
Yeah,
Thank you.
It looks pretty amazing.
I think if you zoomed in a little bit, you'd be like, oh, okay. But I guess at least from afar, I have tricked your eyes into thinking that it was an imported logo. There we go. Yay!
Good stuff.
Nice.
Excellent.
Okay. Well, thank you for listening. I've been Milo.
I continue to be Gibbon.
And I've been BananaMeteor.